Folks, thank you very much for your patience. We will get started now. We're running just a few minutes late. This is the Red Hook Town Board meeting of April 9th, 2019. Would you be kind enough to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. There are a couple seats up here in the front. Sarah, if you'd like to join us. Danielle, Tom, there's some seats over here. Very good. Steve, for the folks at home, and for those of you here this evening, the agenda is posted on the big screen. Fortunately, it's a very short agenda tonight because we know that a lot of you are here to speak on a couple of the public hearings that we have this evening. Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Steve. This is the first meeting of the month. We start each meeting, first meeting, with the supervisor's report. That is a report of the financial condition of the town at a particular moment in time. This report is for the period ending March 31st, 2019. We started the month off with an opening balance of $5,953,283. We had receipts of $4,555,000, and disbursements of $2,934,024. So our ending balance was $7,574,454. And if you're wondering why we have all that money, it's because that's when we collect the taxes for the year. So most of the money is in by March 31st. Harry will be talking about the Community Preservation Fund.
You already checked on it.
You did.
It's very healthy.
It is. It's approximately $1.4 million. In the report, just some notes for you, budgeting wise, for 2019, one particular standout is that we were conservative in our estimate, as we try to always be, for sales tax revenue. We did receive our growth factor. I believe we had budgeted something like $95,000 for 2019, and we've received our funds. It's $171,000. So that's another benefit to our budget for 2019. We will have a very brief update on the 2018 finances as part of tonight's agenda. We have just a couple of budget adjustments, and they relate to the sales tax revenue and some other minor ones. Is there a motion to accept the supervisor's report?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. The same for the budget adjustments. The motion?
So moved.
Second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You also have your monthly variance report for the period, prepared by Ann Conway, our bookkeeper. Okay, at this time, we'll have the clerk's report. Sue?
Town Clerk Monthly Report for March of 2019. Total local shares remitted to supervisor as town revenue, $1,389.91. Amount remitted to New York State Ag and Market Program for their spayed and neutered program, $44. Amount remitted to New York Department of Health for marriage licenses, $67.50. Amount remitted to New York State Environmental Conservation, $1,056.90, for a total state and local revenue of $557.50. Pursuant to Section 27, Sub 1 of the town law, I hereby certify that the foregoing is a full and true statement of all fees and monies received by me, Sue McCann, Town Clerk, Town of Red Hook, during the period stated above in connection with my office. And that's it.
Great. Thank you very much, Sue. Is there a motion to accept the clerk's report?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Second.
Oh, second, thank you, Christine. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Very good. Announcements, I just have a couple of announcements. The first one is a happy announcement. We received word just the other day that our CDBG, that's our Community Development Block Grant application for 2019. We applied for funds to make our recreational park ADA accessible. We're receiving $98,000. It's a federal program that it's administered through the county. There's a committee that reviews the applications. And so the funds are going to be used for the following. Restructuring of the parking area to make it more friendly to folks in wheelchairs. Entry gates, fencing, pathways, alterations to the snack bar area, if you're familiar with our rec park, and the restrooms. Outside of that, we already received funds for the interior restrooms. So you're going to be noticing a lot of construction around our recreational facilities this year, almost a complete revamp of Rec Park. So I will ask you now for your forgiveness, because of course the expression is no pain, no gain. So there'll be disruptions, and we'll have signage to alert you appropriately when work is being conducted in a particular area. But you know, we are revamping and replacing our outdated playground with 2 new playground areas. We are retrofitting one of our fields so that it is accessible to all individuals. We are replacing all of the lighting associated with that field, and we are doing a new basketball court. Those of you who play basketball know that we've had difficulties keeping the surface crack-free. So you're going to see we're going to have 4 new pickleball courts. The park is really going to look super at the end of the year or before that. And so we want to let you know about this grant, which of course makes it that much more affordable to do all that work. We have a few other announcements. The first one is that today is Yellow Ribbon Day. For those of you who are veterans or who honor our veterans, know that this is a day where we take note of their dedication and their commitment, and obviously the sacrifice that they've given to our country. April 27th, there are 2 events going on. One is a senior expo over at the Red Hook Community Center. Sarah Ugolini is here with us, the executive director of the community center. That's from 10 till 2 o'clock. And also on the same day, the firehouses, both Tivoli and Red Hook, are having a barbecue in order to raise funds for their 100th anniversary celebration, which happens later in the year in August. The last announcement we want to make you aware of is Apple Blossom Day is Saturday, May 11th. Do I have that correct? May 11th. Any other announcements?
No.
No? Very good. So we can jump right in. Just a few minutes late, I apologize. We have a public hearing on proposed acquisition of former St. Sylvia's parcels. And So Sue, could I ask you to read the notice, please?
Sure. Notice of public hearing regarding the proposed acquisition of former St. Sylvia's parcels. Please take notice that a public hearing will be held by the Town Board of the Town of Red Hook on April 9th, 2019 at 7:35 p.m. local time at the Town Hall, 7340 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York, to hear all interested persons regarding the acquisition of real property for the following parcels for the public purposes of enhancement of recreational programs, expansion of community facilities, and preserving historic resources. Tax parcel 134-803-6175-18385028. It's 104 through 108 Broadway in Tivoli. Tax parcel number 134-803-617-18383052, and that's Broadway in Tivoli. And tax parcel 134-803-617-18404054, and that's 93 Broadway, Tivoli. Reputed owner, Church of St. Sylvia, which parcels have been offered for sale to the public pursuant to authorization of the Archdiocese of New York. At the public hearing, the town shall outline the purpose of the public project and its effect on the environment, including the economic, ecological, and social effect upon the community, and any other information, including maps and descriptions of the property to be acquired. All persons having an interest in the project are invited to attend the hearing and give oral and written statements, and to submit other documents concerning the public purpose of the proposed acquisition. This hearing is held pursuant to the provisions of Section 201 and 202 of the Eminent Domain Procedure Law of New York. Property owners who may subsequently wish to challenge the condemnation of their property via judicial review may do so only on the basis of issues, facts, and objections raised in such hearing. All interested persons will be given an opportunity to be heard in person or in writing to the Town Board, 7340 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York. All reasonable accommodations will be made for persons with disabilities. In such a case, please notify the town clerk in advance at the above address or by phone 845-758-4606 so that arrangements can be made. Please take further notice that tax maps of the properties are available for review at the office of the town clerk, Red Hook Town Hall, 7340 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York. By order of the Town Board of the Town of Red Hook, dated March 22nd, 2019, Claire Horst, Deputy Town Clerk, Town of Red Hook.
Very good, thank you very much, Sue. And I put on the screen for the folks at home and the folks in the audience an aerial map of the properties if you're not familiar with them. In the village of Tivoli, south of Broadway is the church and the parsonage. On the north side there, highlighted with the black outline, is the parking lot. And then there's a very narrow third parcel that's just a couple of doors east of the parking lot there. So before we begin, I just want to update you. The town of Red Hook was advised a couple of weeks ago. We saw actually the listing of the properties being sold by the Archdiocese of New York in St. Sylvia's Church. And we recognize that this is a very important historic property for the village of Tivoli, which lies within the National Historic Landmark District. And we quickly put together a meeting and decided that we wanted to express our interest in the properties. And so the board authorized negotiations with the church. At the same time, we set up this public hearing because we wanted to notify interested parties that we were not only interested in the properties, that we had intent to acquire the properties, to preserve the community character, the historic building, the parking, which is essential to not only the community as a whole, but if you notice on the map, it connects to Catherine Lane, and so it will be a wonderful parking lot for the rec park as well. If you're familiar with the Tivoli Rec Park, it has a crushed stone and dirt parking area as well, and this would connect nicely to that recreational facility. Subsequently, we advised the broker and the Archdiocese of our interest, and so we have been in negotiations with the church, and I'm happy to report that the Archdiocese has decided to continue those negotiations with the town exclusively at this time, and we are at this point just kind of working out what will be included with the acquisition and discussing those religious additions to the property that will remain with the church and which will be left with the property. So we don't have anything to announce as far as a done deal, if you will, but we're very appreciative of the Archdiocese and certainly of Father Pat, who, and his parish here at St. Chris, who put in a good word for us. I think they've seen over the last year how we've been a good steward of the Red Church property just outside of Tivoli and the cemetery there. And, they're very happy to hear that the town would acquire the church and leave it available for the public to enjoy. We've heard from so many of you already who have been participating, have gone to that church for many reasons. I myself was just there a few months ago for an Eagle Scout ceremony, for example, and I know that the property means a lot to you. So when we have more updates, we will of course make that available to you. But I did want to update you before we begin to have comments. And as we start with comments, I thought I might just call on, if it's okay with you all, our town historian to just give us a little background on the history of the church itself in Tivoli. So here's Emily Major, our town historian.
Am I speaking this way or this way?
Well, you actually, if you could speak to the board, yeah,
Speaking there.
yeah, if you would always address the town board, and the microphone will help.
Okay, so I have skin in the game two ways here, as the town historian and as the deputy mayor of the village of Tivoli. And I guess I want to start by saying that maybe Tivoli isn't always thought of as the most godly place historically, but we love our churches. And by the mid-1800s, we had 5 of them in operation, and that continued into the 20th century. So the first Catholic church was, the services were actually held in private homes, starting in about 1852, for the predominantly Irish and German immigrants who had come to work on the railroad. And the Catholic population was pretty substantial because Tivoli was a railroad stopping point for both wood and water. And most of the men in the village were either fishermen or worked for the railroad. By 1856, Johnston Livingston, who was one of the estate owners, built a small church down on the river. And it remained there until about 1900, when it was donated to a parish down the river. And the story I heard, and that's most of history, is that it was loaded onto a barge, set down the river, and it flipped. So that was the unfortunate demise of the first Catholic church in Tivoli. But 1902, the daughters of Johnston Livingston built St. Sylvia's as a memorial to their mother. And it was consecrated in 1903. And it became the parish school was started in 1888. And so it's been a really important part of the community, continuing up until, as you say, still it's performing some public functions. But it would be sad to see, this go into, it means so much to so many people who attended services, who went to school, who've been to public functions, to see it pass out of sort of the public sphere. And it seems to me that this is part of what, you know, the Community Preservation Fund is meant for, in terms of, it is a structure recognized, both the church and the rectory are listed with the state in their cultural resource system as historic resources within the town, or within the village, within the town, within the landmark district. So it's kind of it is that. And the Community Preservation Fund places change as new people move in, right? But in having a transfer tax that can be used to preserve open space and historic resources, what it's doing is preserving the things that we love. And for the past 20 years, there's been a lot of work done to create the amazing zoning that we have that really recognizes that open space and agriculture and historic resources are what makes the town, you know, really special, along with, of course, the people who live here. So, I think that's what I got.
Could you just touch on for a moment, and I apologize for asking, but the National Historic Landmark District, because not everybody knows what that is, how it was created, and so on and so forth.
Right, so not everybody has a landmark district. Everybody has probably heard of the National Register of Historic Places. And we have several structures that are on that. The Elmendorf, the diner, I think there are 5 things. But there are almost 100,000 properties and districts that are on the National Register of Historic Places. But a landmark district, or a national landmark, it's like, if the National Register is here in terms of cool, landmarks are here. There are only 2,500 of them. And we have an individually listed structure, which is Montgomery Place. And then we have the landmark district, which goes from, in the town, the south all the way up to the north boundary, and essentially from the river to 9G. And so it's recognized for, you know, scenic beauty, but historical importance, right? Because the Hudson River Valley, kind of, you know, founding of the country, essentially, with Henry Hudson in 1609 sailing up and saying, wow, this place is awesome, and anchoring off Kruger Island and looking around and saying, oh my God, you have beavers here, that's great, we're gonna make a lot of people rich. So, yeah, and it's been celebrated over the years by writers like Washington Irving and artists like Thomas Cole, and it is, it's beautiful and it's important and it's ours. So I think it's really important to preserve the things within it that tell that story.
Okay. Thank you very much, Emily.
Can I ask a question? I mean, I have comments for later, but what are the purposes of use for the lots? Is that a plan that we have
Yeah.
right now?
So, yeah, the short answer is no, there's not a plan in place. And in part because we got notice of this on short order. But we recognize that there's a very good likelihood that community facilities will be required in Tivoli. And the church itself, you know, would lend itself to that type of use. We don't specifically, there have been groups that have already reached out to us. What we don't want to do tonight is sort of discuss the merits of all of these ideas. It's more that we would actually like to do that, have a well thought out process, and of course, the property is in the village of Tivoli, so we want to have
I understand,
a
but
task
comments.
force
Yeah.
of, you know, put individuals together and come up with sort of the best plan possible
All right.
for it. And we've identified as the structures as being appropriate for community facilities, certainly the parking to support that, to support the village, and again, to support the recreational park.
So parking, community center, to
Well,
identify
community
needs.
facilities, I want to be careful.
Okay,
You know,
community
community
facilities.
center has, we actually
Okay.
have a community center here in
Yeah.
Red Hook. So, you know, people may, you know, think that we're gonna have a duplicate of that up there. Again, you know, this is all the kinds of things that we want to consider and get a lot more input on. But what we've recognized is that we would like to preserve the church. And so the only way that we can preserve the church and know that we're going to preserve the church and make it available to the public is if the town goes ahead and acquires it with community preservation funds. Because if it's left to the vagaries of the marketplace, if it's left for the highest bidder who wants to use it for private use, it's not likely that the public will have access to that beautiful structure, that parking area, which does get used, from time to time. So we recognize that this is important to the community character of Tivoli, and they have been, the phone's been ringing off the hook, and, I'm sure you've seen elsewhere on social media that there are a lot of folks out there in Tivoli who really care about keeping this church. And, as you do know very well, the churches are really beautiful structures. Yeah.
Hear from the mayor?
So, he's gonna speak to us a little later, he wants. Anybody else like to speak to this issue? You came here and you showed up, so please feel free to tell us what you think.
Hi.
Todd?
Hi, Todd Bay Wright. I'm very excited to hear that you believe the preservation funds, that 2% tax that's normally used for farm and open space, that's the same fund, right?
That is right. And
So right now you believe that can be used for this? Because that's fantastic news.
Yes. In fact, that is one of the main purposes. The priority in the legislation is for working farmlands. But the acceptable uses are that, other open space. We have prioritized in the last update a couple of years ago, wetlands and important water resources that can be used for historic structures. What's exciting is that this would be our first time in the 12 years that we've had that we would actually be preserving a historic structure with those funds. It can be used for recreational lands. In fact, we did use a little bit of money for this extra lot at the rec park, the expansion there on the west side of Linden to create a safer parking area. So yes, there are several appropriate uses for the funds, and yes, that's.
So you're convinced that it could be used for this purpose?
Yes.
You're absolutely sure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to take a state legislative
No,
amendment or change?
No,
There is a
it's
list
in the
of.
it's in the language.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's in the language.
That's
And
great.
there are a list of parcels that can be considered, and this is actually on the list of on the law.
Was just added. Was just added.
Well, we'll get to that in a second, but yeah.
No, a couple of years ago.
So,
Super.
Susan Israedi did it. And
Best
she's
use
sitting
of
right
that, best use of that money ever.
okay, well, good. We're
Because
glad you're-
that's always been one of my pet peeves of that money when it went to purchase the development rights on a large parcel or farmland, that I couldn't go have a picnic on the farmland. That just always pissed me off. To think that it was public money going to a use like that to preserve it, but not allow me or the public to utilize it. And this is fantastic, so
Yeah.
thank you.
May I speak briefly to the actual listing of properties?
Sure.
And I'm going to say a mea culpa here because in the 2016 plan, when we expanded the uses to be for cultural and historic, for those things that contribute to the in biological integrity of the area, the connectivity of the area, which included wetlands and extreme watersheds, etc. We, in the language, said that we would include all of the historic overlay district in Tivoli, which clearly this church is involved in. St. Paul's, which is another church in Tivoli, is clearly listed on this. I just went through that list, which I was sure it was on. There was one that was listed that was part of a Catholic church properties, but these two, by oversight, were not included, but they were intended to be.
Okay. And of course, we would correct any mistake on that, yeah. And this has to go in front of that advisory board, and then we'll get a recommendation from them. So just so you know, this will not be the first for both public hearings tonight. This will be the first but not the only public hearing on these subjects. Okay, there are a lot of you out there, so come on. You traveled here to say something. Linda?
Linda Keelan. I've handed in 2 pages on this topic. I do not agree with the purchase of St. Sylvia's with town maintenance money, which will cost us in years to come. Although it is a building that is within the historic district, if the town were to buy this, it requires a lot of money. And according to Town Law 57 and New York State Law 64H, it only allows the purchase if the municipality maintains the buildings and properties. Real property may not be sold, leased, exchanged, donated, or otherwise disposed of or used for other than the purposes permitted by this section without the express authority of an act of state legislature. Under section 201 of the New York State Eminent Domain Law, it requires a defined purpose. You have not defined a purpose for this building. We have ownership of St. Margaret's Home, which is on the National Register, has been sitting idle for many years. It takes the highway and the rec park monies from their budget to maintain these properties. And you mentioned the Red Hook Cemetery and building. That is also a very old building. The group that had that building maintained it. They got grant money, and what were given was a nice piece of property and a building that was worked on. Gloria Trez and others did that. But we have to maintain all these properties. It costs insurance money. Okay, we can't afford this. You also have to do a seeker to complete this. Those 3 parcels add up to $999,000. And they don't bring any money into the town. They're tax exempt. If we were to take the 2 parcels on the north and use that for the rec park, because there's parking that is needed, I will agree to that, and a little bit of open space, it would help the rec park for Tivoli. However, the town cannot maintain old buildings. You can just about maintain this building, which took you 26 years to make it ADA compliant. In order to make this proposal more palatable, I would suggest that you use the 2 parcels up north for the park, but let the Archdiocese sell the church and its other building so that money can come in. If it could go to a nonprofit group, Scenic Hudson may want it, something like that, or you might get a nice restaurant coming in there. Tivoli is known for its restaurants. This would help. Whether or not you agree, I'm suggesting. So, I'm all for keeping this open to the public. You met on March 22nd, a special meeting in which the agenda was never published. Nobody knew what was happening, and yet you talked about this. I read through the minutes that were done. You need to be transparent. There are things going on that people are not aware of.
Thank you, Linda. and we do our best to try to make people aware of what's going on. And if you'd like to find out the latest and greatest in your community, you can go on our new website, redhook.org, and sign up for Notify Me, and you can be notified of things like tonight's meeting. And just for the record, it's zoned residential, so a restaurant would not be possible there. And yes, there have been
Change the zoning.
lots of folks interested in converting the church to apartments and so on and so forth. Come on, you're all here. Let's go, Todd. I want to see if we can get some other,
Yeah, come on, somebody else. I'll sit it out here with Sarah. Chris? Here.
I'm going to stand up on 2 accounts. When I have my cane, I'm able, so I'm standing up. I'm also able to talk about 2 things. One is community, and the other is community. And we have community here, and it's an expression of how we have survived for, well, 200 and whatever it is, because my math is never very good, but tonight we have the preponderance of great coming together about an extraordinary issue on 2 points, as I said. One is the preservation of our historic landscape, which has been overwhelmingly approved by majority time and time again, most recently in a major way through the Centers and Green Spaces Plan. And we have maintained Red Hook for essentially 400 years, since Henry Hudson arrived in a sailboat and looked around and said, yeah, there were beavers there, and I take my hat off, it's not beaver to him, and all of us who together managed to survive with Tivoli, Red Hook villages, our 3 extraordinary hamlets, Annandale, Berrytown, and Upper Red Hook, and this great village and our town, which is knit together over the rolling hills and meadows and forests of the most extraordinary spot on the earth. It is our responsibility to do what has been demonstrated, has been done so far, is to look forward so that we can maintain our roots from here, from there, excuse me, to here to there. And by God, I will stand up anytime, because this is a part of my soul as it is a part of everyone's soul, this beautiful place that we have. But moreover, the community that we have demonstrated time and time again over hundreds of years, down to the present, when we have forward-thinking community expressions of democracy. And we're right behind you. I am, as a citizen and a resident who was born here and brought up here, and thank God has returned here. And I just laud the town board's action in good thinking. And I thank everybody for my huge affection.
as I say to all the folks who clap, you're invited here every other week. We have
Entertainment always.
the rest of you, this is our last meeting for the year. We're back.
Hi, I'm Barb Maple, and relatively new resident. We came in 1973. But I just have to speak and thank you for your vision and your wisdom and your inclination to preserve what is really important in our community. St. Sylvia's has a historic value that cannot be measured. It is part of the Livingston heritage, which is the heritage of our area. Plus, it is a beautiful church. For those of you that have not been inside it, you would be blown away. Go on a sunny day when those windows light up. It has the acoustics of heaven. It would provide venues for concerts. It would be a wonderful community center. You could expand your library into the rectory. I just have to say, I'm 100% for what you're trying to do. And if in any way I can help, I was a grants writer at Bard for probably 20 years. Not that I was all that great, but there are lots of opportunities for funding that might ameliorate what Linda is concerned about. Anyway, I had to say that, so.
Okay, anyone else? Don't be shy. Me?
Hi, I'm Naveen Sharma, resident of Tivoli for about over 21 years now, also a big taxpayer there. I love the community. I love the town of Red Hook. I appreciate its historic character, its location among rural surroundings, on the Hudson River. There's so many wonderful areas to serve the community here. I, for one, enjoy Poets Walk, the circle walk around the village of Tivoli, and I see so many people using it. There are great purposes to which we can put the Community Preservation Fund to use. I personally feel this is not a particularly good use. It's 1/3 of your stated funds right now, I hear, so it's a large allocation. And I think that we need to, I support the Community Preservation Fund, wholesale. In principle, I do, along with support of other community organizations like Scenic Hudson, etc. I just think that the use of these funds should be targeted judiciously and not distributed willy-nilly. There are ideas I have about spaces that have been acquired that don't necessarily serve a purpose. Mountain Trail, I don't think I've ever seen anybody go on it, but I don't know if anybody does, I'd like to know. So there are 3 reasons I don't support it. Okay? One of them is I think that we do have a decent amount of green space in this area. From my calculations, I think over 25% of the land area in the town of Red Hook has been marked one way or another and is preserved. I think the same is the case for Tivoli right now. I think the village currently needs more economic inputs. We are concerned about the potential burden of coming increased water taxes. Among others, does the village have an adequate tax base, or are its residents going to be subjected to increasing tax burdens because of this? I'd like to really understand how long-term we have a plan to sustain something like this. Instead of continuing to keep this property tax exempt, I think converting it into a taxable parcel will save taxpayers money and bring more revenue to the village. I also note, part of your charter in the community preservation program that you have is to provide incentives for new development to locate within the village of Tivoli and within or adjacent to the village of Red Hook and other established areas of the town, while discouraging a land use pattern that might be characterized by an inefficiently serviced and environmentally insensitive uniform dispersion of development throughout the town. There aren't many areas left in the village, that new development is possible. These areas are right now zoned as R15. They could add to the tax base, and they could keep some of the tax burden away from the residents of Tivoli. So I think we really need to understand what the implications are, and that's why I'm asking for a clear plan. What is going to be the long-term impact for Tivoli? I understand the historic character of the church. I also believe that the church has a right to designate what happens, what use that building is going to be put to. I'm pretty sure they would not want a restaurant in there, no matter who does anything with that place. They could designate it for a community purpose. I'm just saying that the maintenance, the upkeep, and actually even the remediation of some of the problems in that church is going to be huge. And I really would like to see a plan that lays all those things out. Finally, I'm not totally convinced that I'd like to see this. I hear a lot of people saying, we want a parking lot next to the rec park. There's about 40 spaces there. Is this going to be used by the rec park or the town? I can't imagine people walking 700 or 800 feet more down from that parking lot to the business center of Tivoli. I don't think people do that now, and I don't even think, to begin with, that there's a huge parking problem in Tivoli. We own the building that Murray's runs right now. We're required by code to have a huge parking lot in the back. I've never counted more than 10 cars there. So I'm not totally convinced that this stuff is really based on facts, and I really would like to see a plan that is explicit and lays out the financial considerations that everybody has to live with. That's my comments.
Thank you, Naveen.
Thank you.
Danielle?
My name's Danielle Cordier. I've been a resident of Tivoli, well, on and off since 1977. I do support the town of Red Hook's proposed acquisition. I presume that the village of Tivoli, acquisitions of properties or sales of properties within the village, all the monies from that go into the community preservation funds. So I would think that in our village, acquisition of farmland is probably not very likely because there isn't really that much within the village. So I would think that this actual project would be uniquely suited for the village of Tivoli in terms of an acquisition to preserve cultural and heritage resources. And I don't like public speaking, which is kind of weird because of what I do for a living. But I presume that there's probably a lot of people here who are supportive but maybe shy. So I hope that there's a lot of people here who are supportive of this project and that you're aware of who's supportive as opposed to people who are just against it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Pamela?
Hello, thank you for having a hearing. My name is Pamela Marin and I live in a church. And I come here actually wearing two hats. One is, the first is a lover of churches. My husband and I live in a church on North Road that was actually in the close family. And we also own Murray's, the building that Murray's is housed in with the beautiful upstairs. We love churches. I've always loved alternative space and have an interest in all the historic preservation for adaptive reuse. So I must take issue with the fact that Red Hook is not the only savior of the churches in Tivoli. So
Saint Pamela.
we too could say St. Sylvia's. So one of the things about the second hat is as a resident of Tivoli for 21 years. And I'm concerned about the purchase for many reasons. First, Tivoli does not have a huge budget. I mean, we've struggled over the years even having enough money to put a roof on the fireman's hall. I mean, we're not a wealthy town. It's a modest town and we pay a lot of taxes for a modest town. And this property is big. If you look at all the nonprofits that we have in Tivoli, and you go from where the water tower is going to be all the way down Broadway, 1/4 of the property, 25% if you included St. Sylvia's, is nonprofit. That means no taxes. And I feel like we can't afford that. You know, it's not only purchasing the church. I'm not sure that, you know, I don't agree that this money should necessarily be used for this kind of thing. I feel that when this was put into place, it was to create open space, and that, to me, that implies that the density should be in the villages and towns. We're now talking about a property that has 3 buildable lots in an area that already has houses. We're talking about a house, you know, a rectory, and also the church. And it's a lot of property. And to buy it is one thing, but it's an enormous, and we can tell you from personal experience, enormous expense. This church has, you know, been empty for many years. It has major environmental problems. It has leaks. It's extremely beautiful, but it's on its way to rack and ruin. And I can't imagine that we have enough money to really take care of it properly. And you know, we can come to a meeting like this and we can spin all sorts of wheels, but there's basically no plan, no real plan in place. And it's kind of hard to deal with the facts when there aren't any facts here. And you know, I think that we need another public hearing where there's an exact plan of what you want to do. I mean, you know, we're kind of out in the ozone right now. I think the tax issue is huge. I think that I agree with you, Linda, we need money. And we need it for a lot of other things. I think that you know, we're supposed to be running municipalities. We're not in the real estate business. And basically, to me, this is a real estate transaction. And, you know, I don't understand why there's this feeling that nobody else could come in and make it a community or art center, why nobody else could, you know, preserve it, restore it, besides Red Hook and Tivoli. I think there are a lot of people who could do that, and I think they could do it well. And that would put it back on the tax map. I mean, we have, Kotzebue has what, 100 acres? Nonprofit, you know, no tax. No, and I think it's important. I think that's really important. So I think threatening eminent domain is very, I don't think we should threaten anybody with anything, especially a church. And I think that using those preservation funds is wrong. I think we should not be in the real estate business. And I think keeping it off the tax rolls is wrong. And I don't mean any disrespect to you two, but I don't think that this is a really good use of our money or a good project.
Okay. Well, that's the diversity of opinion that we get in the community.
Very right.
And just on the tax issue, I hope you all realize we're very sensitive to taxes here at the town of Red Hook. We are now in our third year of not raising taxes, and we don't envision having, a proposal to raise taxes in the ensuing couple of years. This is part of why we work so hard on our budgeting, we work so hard on lowering expenses so that we can consider these types of things. The assessed value, I haven't checked your numbers, Linda, but if it's $900 and something thousand, it's a tiny fraction of the total tax base, the tax rolls in the village of Tivoli. If it were to go on the rolls, $1 million, $1.5 million, let's say the houses were fixed up or built, whatever, it would be a fairly small contribution to the tax base. And I say that at the same time later on today, I'm going to tell you that our tax base has risen over $24 million in the town of Red Hook in just the last 3 years alone, which makes us be able to project so favorably in the next few years that we won't need to increase taxes. But I want you to know that we're sensitive to those issues, that we've taken a look at the work. We know that both structures require some work, and some of the CPF monies can be used for that, up to 10% can be used for maintenance purposes and other associated costs. We do anticipate having grant opportunities. We're going to talk about a grant opportunity later tonight that potentially can be used for work on those buildings. So we just want you to know that we're sensitive to those issues that are being raised. You're back.
I'm coming back again, I can't stop.
Okay.
In the village of Whitehall, totally different than the village of Tivoli, but the Catholic Church closed down and it was acquired by the adjacent neighbor, and there were so many restrictions on it that they just leveled it and turned it into a parking lot. So now a beautiful Catholic church in that village was lost, and now is the parking lot to the Chevy dealer next door. So if this is left open, one would hope that if a private person bought it, they lovingly restored it and did something beautiful. But there's no guarantees.
Yeah.
Once someone buys it, they do with it what they want.
That's exactly.
Just a word on clearing structures. I'm 74, been in Red Hook on and off for most of those years. And in the village of Red Hook, we have lost treasure after treasure after treasure. We've been dying by 1,000 cuts. Tivoli, over the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years, by dint of being off the main drag, being fortunate to be smaller than the village of Red Hook, and being fortunate to have people come who are willing participants in community and revivification. You have in Tivoli what I believe is, which my parents hadn't had the forethought in 1943 to move us 6 kids there on our farm, they should have gone to Tivoli. Because if we lose that church and its surrounding Tivoli, we've not only lost an historic building, we've lost an historic sense of the community, the visual sense that you get when you pass by that church, which is integral to the community and to the visual landscape of extraordinary trees, which are lovingly taken care of in the most amazing gardens. And I've been a gardener for a long time now. I came back from the Peace Corps after growing wheat in India, in the Punjab. I mean, what did I know? Nothing, Pete. I knew about dairy farming. I'm from Irving Fraley. But I came back and I've been a gardener ever since. And the most amazing gardens are in Tivoli. Tivoli cares. We care, and we care about every nook and cranny of this extraordinary visual landscape and built landscape because it is for human beings to come and go and enjoy together in the warp and weave of daily life, because as the graveyard tombstone reminds us, do not laugh, for as I am now, so shall ye be.
So let's make that parking lot a garden.
I will be.
Can you just repeat that? So up to 10% of the whole fund
Yes.
can be used for?
For maintenance, up to 10% of the whole fund can be used for maintenance and other associated costs. Yeah.
Including
And
obviously
we have
repairs.
raised, if anybody cares to know, we've raised over $2.5 million since this was instituted back in 2007. And I will tell you, a large majority of these funds come from the Hudson River estates when they sell. And recently, the Hudson River estate, guess where, just outside of Tivoli, sold for 5 figures. And it put quite a bit of money into this CPF fund. So it's almost appropriate in some respects that we use it towards something Tivoli related, because a large majority of the funds came from it.
Thanks, Robert. Is it a possibility that the town could go into a partnership with somebody privately and cut it in half, subdivide the church out, and then have the other property dealt with? Like, I agree with my neighbour up here that the parking lot thing, like people walking from the centre of Tivoli down to this parking lot, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And the issue is the church. So use 250 grand from your fund to buy the church and then just split off the rest of the property and leave it sell.
That parking lot goes with the church. So when you go to events in the church, like I've been to events in the church, you need the parking lot because that's where the cars go for those events in the church.
But is there no parking on the street?
Well, there's some, but it depends on the size of the event. It's a good sized space, so you could exhaust very easily, whether it's a function at the fire company or a function at the church. You could exhaust the parking, the on-street parking there. And, you know, again, we're trying to think 10, 20, 40 years down the road. So, you know, you think carefully about your parking lots and whether or not you want to keep them public or have them be public before you go ahead and you sell them all. That's what I would say.
Yeah, the only thing though is that if somebody has a business in Tivoli, the population is shrinking in Tivoli, not growing. So I understand like the church is a very important, you know, piece of history and it should be preserved. So I think that like implying that logic of taking a private partner with public money also could be a solution.
Yeah. Again, I don't think we're going to, in answer to some of the questions, I don't think we're going to rule out anything. We're going to figure out what we're allowed to do, first of all, and then we're going to really carefully think this through. So in answer to Pamela's question, I can assure you that we will not have a concrete plan 2 weeks from now at our next public hearing, because sometimes the quickest decisions are not the best decisions for how you're going to utilize a space. And we're certainly going to get a lot more input from the residents of the village of Tivoli. We're going to get input from the village trustees. We're going to get probably some help with some, maybe planning departments and so on and so forth, you know, at the county. So don't look for a concrete plan, because we'll only disappoint you if you think that's what we need in order to move forward. I think we have a very good confidence level that preserving this historic structure is important to community character, it's important to the public, to the residents. These are the people that are here tonight who made the trip down here, but I can assure you that there are many more that have reached out to us to talk about the importance of preserving St. Sylvia. All right, why don't we let Linda, if you Julia, you wanna go? Okay. And then if you don't mind, Linda, I'd like to have Joel go, and then we have to get on to some other public hearings.
So
Julie?
I'll be really quick, I'm gonna piggyback on things.
Sure.
So my big question is, I mean, I think preserving the church is really, really important. It's not only historically important, it's spiritually important. As people have mentioned, the landscape's really important. So if you have 1.4 in the CPA fund, and let's say you take 500 and buy the church, and then you have 10% left of the 900,000, which gives you 90,000. How can the town possibly restore that church and then maintain it on $90,000?
Again,
Even if you get grants, I mean, these things have to happen quickly. The mold in the basement, the masonry work, the new roofs, there's a lot of work to do right away. So that's my question.
Sure. And just on the math, it's the 10% of the whole that we raised, the $2.5 million.
I thought it was
So-
10% of what you have in the bank.
No, it's 10% of what we raised in the fund to be used for maintenance. So we anticipate hopefully a very quick acquisition of the church, quickly address the mold that's in the basement, where there used to be a school, for those of you whose kids went to that school there, you're familiar with it. So immediately address that, and yes, we'll be reaching out to go get grants, and it's quite possible that we might obtain a grant this year to do additional work on the rectory and the church itself. Again, this would be a cost that the town would bear, not a cost that the village would bear. So if there are any village residents concerned about taxes, it's our intention to acquire and to repair the structures. Yes.
Plus, that fund isn't a static fund. I mean,
It is not.
money's constantly coming to the fund.
That's right.
Transfers, it really.
That's right. For those of you who are junkies of information, that fund sunsets, means it expires in 2027. You all voted for this fund, by the way. So it's good. Thank you. But we've got you some farm parcels over there by Tivoli, but so you all voted for that, and you'll get a chance to vote for it again perhaps in 2027, so it sunsets after 20 years. Lenny, we'll do one more comment. We went from nobody wanting to speak, so now we're trying to, but
My name is Leonard Campbell. I live in Red Hook. I've been here 30 years. I am a Vietnam veteran, and I got a free ride to the culinary, thanks to the VA. If you've been in that building, which was a Jesuit monastery, seminary, there are stained glass windows in Roth Hall, as they use, for big events. The culinary covered the sanctuary windows, they're still there. All the rest of the windows are still there, stained glass windows representing different Catholic events. A few people came into the culinary within the 2 years I was there and protested that they're religious and they shouldn't be there. The culinary said, too bad. We own the building and we're going to keep them. So I hope whatever you use that building for, that the building's windows stay as they are. They're historic. They represent anyone's religion. And I hate to see it torn down or used as a restaurant. That's my opinion.
thanks, Lenny. There are a couple of the stained glass windows that reference the Livingstons, who I believe donated the money for the church. So, all right, we are.
I want to say something.
Yeah. Well, can we let our mayor,
Oh,
Mayor
yes,
Tivoli speak
yes.
first?
All right, he comes
In
first.
deference to-
If I don't cover what you wanted to say, Harry, jump in. I'm just curious, Tivoli residents in the house? Um, Anyone who was a member of the congregation of St. Sylvia's over the years? I just thought it'd be great for us all to see that. Good evening, my name is Joel Griffith. It's my great pleasure to serve as the mayor of the village of Tivoli. One of the many aspects of that job description is that I am the complaint department. And a tremendous, consistent, recurring complaint I've had since being mayor from both residents, visitors, and businesses is the lack of parking. And I believe that, a few years ago I actually approached Father Pat to see if we could work out a shared deal like the village has with the Masonic Hall. Didn't pan out, but my urgency responding to the complaints of my community, that's evidence of that. Obviously, its connection to the rec park is huge. So I believe we do have a parking problem, and I think that, Tivoli's great. You park one place and you can walk everywhere, and I know it's 700 yards to the downtown, but, if I park in Poughkeepsie or I'm in New York City, I'm gonna walk 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blocks to go where I'm going. I think it's far, but it's not that far. This is a little scattershot, because I got a few different things. 12 years ago, the town and the 2 villages had the foresight and the vision to establish this community preservation fund. It's relatively young, even 12 years in, and while it has not been used for historic resource acquisition and preservation, that is a stated use, this is exactly, the acquisition of St. Sylvia's is exactly what that fund was envisioned for. And as Danielle said, one of our residents, Tivoli doesn't have a lot of farms for us to protect, but we've got some incredible architecture and historic resources. So I really support this as an appropriate use of the funds. I think I commend the council for the vision to sort of grab it while you can, and then I believe that this community, the villages, the town, will have no problem coming up with any number of wonderful uses for all of that campus, all those parcels. I would expect and hope that were the town to acquire it, we're going to have a series of public forums where everyone can come and we can explore all the ideas. I don't think uses is an issue. I don't think we're going to have a problem figuring out wonderful uses. And if some of you don't know, the Empire State Trail is also coming right up Montgomery Street, right along Broadway, and right up Woods Road. And there's actually a meeting on that tomorrow night at 6 o'clock at the high school. So picture this community space right on the Empire State Trail. I just think there's a synergy there and an opportunity to do wonderful things for visitors and residents. This is a vulnerable moment. I wasn't raised Catholic in Tivoli, but I had lots of Catholic friends, and I'm sure many people in this room remember the Ruggiero family and Kathy Ruggiero, who passed away in 2000. I first went in St. Sylvia's at age 10 to a midnight mass with my friend Ben Ruggiero, and it touched me as a young person. It made me proud of my village, sort of awestruck at what we have down the street from my house that I'd never seen. And, having later in life gotten to go to the Hagia Sophia and St. Peter's, St. Sylvia's is a gorgeous, gorgeous piece of architecture. And while, I'm not Catholic or Christian necessarily, I don't think the secular sacred issue should, the window should stay, I guess is my point. We're at a vulnerable moment. I think that private hands could get that property, and that's the end of the community access to our patrimony and our heritage, possibly forever. That would be a tragedy. It would be short-sighted. And while private owners may well restore it and sort of keep it nice and from falling down, if the public can't go in it, it's not the same. So, we're vulnerable right now, and I think you have a great plan to get us over that vulnerability. And, it's not just about, let's avoid a terrible result for the St. Sylvia's properties. This is such an opportunity, because I think we will come up with tremendous uses, and it will benefit certainly the village of Tivoli and the whole town. So again, I commend you for your vision and courage. Tivoli, we love being small, but we don't have the money to do this. We don't have we're part of the Community Preservation Fund, but Tivoli doesn't have the means to do this. And the Thursday after the listing, I started getting calls from residents concerned about the fate of St. Sylvia's, and I think you have a tremendous plan that answers those concerns. Tivoli couldn't do this. If we could, we'd be considering it ourselves, I believe. I would, and I think the board would as well. So thank you for doing this, and I personally support you as a lifelong resident, native, and in my office as mayor. My constituents are free to agree with me, as they often do, but I'm for this all the way.
We have to realize that we would be setting a precedent by purchasing this church. Remember, Red Hook has lots of churches. Are we gonna be purchasing all the churches? The Lutheran Church has financial difficulties. I worked with them. We've got the Episcopal, the Methodist, the Catholic Church.
Okay.
When do we stop? And I want the 10% for St. Margaret's. You haven't done a damn thing for it.
Sorry, I know we need to move on.
Go ahead.
I would just like to say, my name is Jake Stortini, and I've lived in the village now for almost 10 years. I own a business, Murray's. And I would just like to, I guess, point out, I am a little bit conflicted with this because I think that I, respect what the village is doing, but I also do see the other side of it. And I would like to just point out two things. One is that I feel like from the very beginning, when I first heard about the village acquiring this, before there was even talk of preserving the church itself, it was all about the parking. From the beginning, all the way through tonight, we've heard so much about the importance of the parking, what an asset that is for the village, and I feel like there are other things to consider. I don't think that Tivoli has a parking issue. I feel like there's plenty of parking in Tivoli, and I certainly don't think that it's certain that that parking lot is going to be required when we're not exactly sure how the building will be used. And the second thing that I just would like to point out, I suppose, is that I feel like our sense of community in Tivoli might need to be, it could certainly be broadened a little bit more, especially as we think about how we're going to use the building. A building like this shouldn't just sit, it shouldn't be used every now and then, it should be used very frequently, and I think that that needs to be a huge part of the way that we think about how this building will be used. For example, I think that reaching out, seeing what a partnership like with Bard College could potentially look like. They are a huge part of our community. I feel like they have maybe been not incorporated into the community in Tivoli as much as they could be. They're a huge asset for all of us in Tivoli, for all of Red Hook. They bring so much here that maybe that's a partnership that could be built so that we can be using this building more frequently in the community.
Okay.
May I speak now?
You may we close the public hearing for tonight or extend the public hearing to our next meeting? And then Harry, you can.
You extend the public hearing if you
Okay,
if you
so
want, but
I'd like to
but
make a
I
motion,
do
we
want to.
extend the public hearing to April 24th at 7:35. Second, Harry?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, Harry, what would you like to say?
I used to live in New York City, and among many other places, and I wanted to move to the country. And at the time, this is 25 years ago or so, the Tivoli was getting a lot of publicity in the Times, on and off, and they still do. And I came up here one weekend, and Tivoli was this charming little town with all the windows soaped up on Main Street. And I discovered what Red Hook was here. I traveled around Red Hook, and I wound up moving here 20 years ago. And I got involved in Tivoli government. Mark was the mayor then, and this fellow over here, this young guy here, he got me involved. He was the deputy mayor, Tom Cordier. So I was on various committees in the town, really now for almost 20 years. And the initial committee was the committee to preserve the farms, just to be generic. So we worked for years to create a zoning that's a groundbreaking zoning. I don't know that it exists anywhere else in the universe that to save the farms and the open space here, and which in fact, from my point of view, saves a quality of life that is unique to this town. You can move here, know that you're living in the country, and it's going to stay country. Now we have some villages. Tivoli has grown immensely. It's grown without growing in the time I've lived here. The shops have opened up, the restaurants have opened up, there's activity in town. I can walk to town, and so that's cheating, I guess. But so I don't have to worry about parking. but parking is not an issue. And my concern is the importance of preserving the quality of life here, town-wide. It includes having the villages, having compact areas to live, like Tivoli is a prime example, downtown Red Hook is a prime example. We're building a new area down the street here that will also be a very compact neighborhood, a walkable neighborhood with a walkable community, and we still will be surrounded by farms and open space. So that's the bottom line of my comment, my feelings, and my hope for the future of this town. And working on Tivoli as we are, I think is important in that context.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. We actually have another public hearing related to the same matter, which is to correct our Community Preservation Fund database listing that didn't have these properties in it. So we'll give it a minute or two. Thank you all for coming. We're here second Tuesdays and fourth Wednesdays. It's all free of charge.
Gonna put in a popcorn maker. Robert?
Thanks, folks. We're back to our second public hearing, which was supposed to start a while ago. It relates to the first issue. It's a proposed amendment of the Town of Red Hook Community Preservation Plan, Local Law C of 2019. If you read the notice really basically says what Local Law C is, which is to include these three properties into the plan. Susan Israeli, the former chair of the CPF Advisory Board, said
That was clearly an oversight.
okay. So it didn't make that giant database. If you look at the properties that are in the plan, it's quite extensive. So we're going to correct that record, include them, take that process. So again, like with the first public hearing, this is only one of at least two, because this needs to be referred to the advisory board. And so that's something that I hope we'll be doing this evening. So.
And Mr. Supervisor, remember that there are also a couple of other corrections being made with this amendment.
That's right.
One of which is a tax map reference that was for a parcel on, a Miglarelli parcel on, in the vicinity of Aspinwall, which was incorrectly labeled, but which was included, but just with the wrong tax copy. And the other of which was not included, a small parcel to provide a potential access from Aspinwall Road to an 89-acre parcel that was included. So the small parcel was not included originally.
Right, and what our attorney to the town is referencing is that we have been working, somebody talked about public-private partnership, we've been working with the Winnicke Land Trust now for the last couple of years, creating an extensive link of the village-to-village trail. So a trailhead is going to be constructed on Linden Avenue West. A trail will be constructed through 336 acres, I believe it is, properties that will take you all the way up to 9G, and then cross over to Barton College there, and continue on up to the village of Tivoli through the DEC lands. And so all of the properties, the large properties, were included in the CPF plan, with the exception of a tiny little connection that gets you, which we own, which gets you to Aspinwall.
No, we don't own it.
We don't own it, that's part of the Miglarelli company, right? So it gets you to Aspinwall. And so that's going to be part of the referral to the Community Preservation Advisory Board. So we have a notice for the second public hearing. Sue, if you'd be kind enough to.
Sure. Notice of public hearing on proposed amendment of the Town of Red Hook Community Preservation Plan, Local Law C, proposed of 2019. Notice is hereby given that the town board of the town of Red Hook, Dutchess County will meet at the town hall, 7340 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York, on the 9th day of April 2019 at 7:45 p.m. prevailing time for the purpose of conducting a public hearing upon a proposed local law C of 2019, including the 2019 amendment of the Town of Red Hook Community Preservation Plan. The Town of Red Hook Community Preservation Plan, in accordance with Section 64H of the Town Law and Chapter 57 of the Red Hook Town Code, establishes a plan for the preservation of community character, to acquire interest or rights in real property for the preservation of community character within the town, including villages, in accordance with such plan, and in cooperation with willing sellers, and to provide a management and stewardship program for such interests and rights. The town board will meet to consider such amendment and hear all persons interested in the subject therefore and concerning the same. Please take further notice that copies of said local law C proposed, including the 2019 amendment of the Community Preservation Plan, are available for review at the Town Hall, 7340 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York. All interested persons will be given an opportunity to be heard in person or by directed comments in writing to the Town Board, 7340 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York. All reasonable accommodations will be made for persons with disability. In such a case, please notify the town clerk in advance at the above address or by phone 845-758-4606 so that arrangements can be made. By order of the Town Board of the Town of Red Hook, March 27, 2019, Sue McCann, Town Clerk, Town of Red Hook.
Thank you very much, Sue. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anybody who'd like to comment on this? It's sort of the same issue. Yeah, Linda?
My issue is that I could not find Amendment C to study it so I could comment on it. It was nowhere to be found on the town website. And I couldn't find it through Google. So therefore, I feel that this whole public hearing should be re-advertised and start over. The
Okay, I
people
think
need to know.
Sorry, I
And
think I
you're not
mentioned that
helping.
there's going to be an extension of this public hearing as well into the next meeting. And just so you know, the notice that was placed for this public hearing actually has all the information, even more information than local law C. Is just a couple of paragraphs of legalese. But yes, I think it's now linked up directly with the notice on the website. So yeah, anybody.
Yeah, as of about 1:30, it still was not there.
Okay. Any other comments? Dominic?
Yeah, Dominic Tampone. I don't know if I have to come to the mic. I just want to comment on the fact of the process as well. I looked for this law and I couldn't find it on the website. As you know, I believe you do, because I came down today and spoke with your secretary, and she was kind enough to help me. So apparently, the law that we're having a public hearing on has not been available to the public at all. It wasn't on the website, it wasn't posted in town, and when I requested a copy of it, you know, through the various offices today, it wasn't any place to be found. So I don't have a comment on the law because I've never read it, but I would like all of the citizens in Red Hook, if they do care to read it, to have that opportunity. At about 4 o'clock today, your secretary was kind enough to call me back and said, in fact, that the mistake that was made, where the link wasn't made, and I think it was just an error, that the link to the actual law itself wasn't put on the site. So I just wanted to comment that I can't comment on the law because I don't know what the law is about. I have this one page that says there are attachments to the law, and this is on the website, but the attachments are now missing. So if you go on a town website, which should be one of the two main resources for us, this one-page notice of the filings there, none of the attachments are there, as well as the law was not available to anybody walking in and getting it, as I just discussed. So I think, just from a standpoint of a process and from the standpoint of legal notice, that we should be aware of that, because I don't even know how extensive law is. I know it refers to a 168-page document.
Don,
Yes.
it's right there, it's 2 paragraphs. Why don't you pick up a copy of it?
Well, it refers to an attachment.
Okay.
So where's the attachment?
It's right there,
Where?
in the folder.
It's right in the folder.
But doesn't the law state that we should have 10 days to review it prior to
That's right.
a public
The
hearing?
law states that you're supposed to have 10 days of a
Notice.
The notice was published.
Right?
The clerk's office had a copy of the notice. I understand if you reached out and hoped it was on the website. I know that they endeavor at all times to put those actual documents on the website as well. But the notice, I looked, was on the website.
A notice tells you that there's a law
I
that's
understand.
coming up, but that's not the law. The law was not available.
I don't want to argue with you.
You don't have to, I'm
I'm
right.
just telling you what the legal requirements are, Dominic.
Okay.
I'm just telling you, the law was not available, so where do we get a copy of the law, which is a question? This is
Clerk's
not the law.
office is the answer.
The clerk's office, and you did happen to step in while the clerk was out of the office, and the deputy clerk.
No,
You know,
I'm
the
sure
file
we
that
have
was
a lot
right
of
there in the
excuses
file.
and reasons. This wasn't meant to be combative. This was meant to be me as a concerned citizen, just letting everyone know it wasn't available to read. That's all. I'm probably in support of it. I just don't know what it says.
In fairness, Dominic, you stopped in while the town clerk was out of her office. And so I don't know that it's fair to say that it was not available in the town clerk's office. The deputy clerk didn't locate the file because the file had already been removed for tonight's meeting. And so it was just a simple, email.
So where do I get a copy of the law? That's my question. I just picked this up. This says attached. There's nothing attached. As a citizen, I just want to read the law that you're talking about.
Okay, there's the law. The attachments should be inside the public folder. Okay. Any other comments before we close the public hearing? Tom?
I would just like to state that if two people think that it was not available, that maybe you should reconsider and then restart the process so that everyone can agree that it was a legitimate process when you get down the road. What's the other thing I was going to say? I know you said before that you are positive that the preservation funds can be used for this. But one thing I want to be sure of is that we all agree in some fashion over the next month or two, and you guys, and we go to a closing, I want to be sure that it's preservation money and it's not coming out of the general fund. And I don't want to look back at the meeting and say, well, you kind of shook your head like, yeah, I was 99% sure. I want to be sure that we're absolutely 100% sure, because I think that's a wonderful use of the money. And that's where it should come from. The reason I was here is because it was coming out of the general fund, I was actually totally against it. Because I didn't think that truly public money should be used for that purpose. But I didn't think that we should be buying buildings and things like that and then trying to preserve them and maintain them. I mean, just maintaining that building, as some people have brought up, it's probably going to be 3 times what this building costs to maintain in a year, maybe at least twice. It's going to be a lot of money, right, to maintain it. But I'm in favor of as long as we can use that preservation money, and I would hate to see it be different than that.
So Todd, we're going to use that preservation money.
Cool.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
Richie, did you want to say something before we close
Yes,
the public hearing?
I was on the road, and I want to refresh, looking at the law. So I asked my wife, before I get home, find me the law. She just Googled it. And the law is there available for you to read. And
The notice is there.
do a little extra work.
The law is there, the link was made in the afternoon since the link was not there. So again, as I said in the beginning, this is just the first of a couple of public hearings related to this. So we want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to weigh in. We can consider your thoughts. Okay. If there is no other comment in the public hearing, I would make a motion that we close it. We extend it to April 24th at 7:45.
So moved.
Do not hold me to 7:45. Okay. Second, Harry?
Yes, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay. We're going to move on to, thank you all very much for coming. We're going to move on to agenda item number 1. And that is just a brief review of the 2018 finances. I intended to do this at the last meeting. We had a very lengthy meeting, so I kind of skipped over that.
And this one is lengthy as well.
And this one turned out to be a little longer than expected, but it says New 2018 New York State Comptroller Annual Report. Just for clarification, it's the annual report that we make to the Comptroller's Office in the state of the finances at the end of 2018. These are the same slides that we keep using each year and making changes to as they're appropriate. But the highlights of the annual documents say solid fund balances, planning for future through capital reserve accounts. You'll see a little bit of that later in one of the slides. Some of the changes will be going out to bond, which we budgeted for a lot of uses this year. We have a very strong rating from Standard & Poor's, and potentially it could be even the highest rating. Our fiscal stress report is extremely low because we have low debt and we are managing our funds well according to the Comptroller's Office. At the same time, we haven't raised taxes in the last few years, but we are making investments in our community, whether it's the Route 9 sidewalks to that neighborhood that Harry was referring to. That's fully paid off at this point. Town Hall campus, we've made some retrofits, we've acquired additional property for future expansion. We are obviously making lots of improvements to our existing recreational parks and to the playgrounds specifically. We, in 2018, started to own and operate the Red Church Cemetery, and I bring this up because I think it was one of the things that the church recognized is that the town stewardship of that property is going very well and at a very modest cost. I know that maintenance cost is something that has been brought up tonight, but it's a really rather modest cost, and we have John Kuhn and his staff to really thank for that. And so we're making other investments over the years. We've replaced some of our aging highway vehicles and equipment. Over, I think we referenced at the last meeting, over $850,000 there in the last 3 years. We don't do it on our own. We work very hard to get grants to offset these expenses, and we continue to update the list of grants that we've received. And this is hopefully a comprehensive list, but there may be more grants. We added the $98,000 that we found out we were receiving just the other day. We've reorged some of our staffing, in particular here at Town Hall, which saves us quite a bit of money each year. We refinanced some of our debt, which was a one-time but important savings. We expect to have lower utility costs when our municipal solar project is up and running, and if we ever get approval from the Public Service Commission, we'll have our LED streetlight conversion, which will also provide savings over the next 15 years. The summary of our fund balances, you see they're fairly steady. We've had basically flat at A and B. DB is it's gone down a little bit. We have some one-time expenses, and it's a more labor-intensive department for obvious reasons. And so that balance is a little bit lower than it was at the end of 2017. But when you look at the various funds, the actual expenditures and actual revenues over the course of the year, that they show a very positive contribution. These numbers, there's a bunch of asterisks there, with the A fund. We transferred, because we had more revenue than expenses, so we assigned some money to our capital projects, about $139,000 in addition to that. Some of that fund balance, by the way, has been assigned to more recreation. The B fund, we transferred $100,000 from the B to H capital projects funds. We have that big culvert on Stony Brook Road that we are doing work on, and hopefully we'll have that completed sometime later this summer. And the DV fund, you see, that figure does not include transfers from the DV to capital equipment. But all in all, once again, our finances are strong. We've done this without raising taxes, and we continue to make investments in our community. So that's the summary for that. And if there aren't any questions, we can go right into agenda item number 2, which is the discussion on this community preservation plan update parcel. So I'll go back to that diagram, we will. Those are the 3 parcels we're discussing, including in the plan. It was intended to be in the plan, Susan Mizrahi told us, but when stuff was brought down to the county for mapping and all that stuff, anyway. We've got these 3 parcels, one on the south side, 2 on the north. We also have a 4th parcel that our attorney to the town referenced. And so we need to do some work associated with that if we would like to consider adding that to the plan. And we have prepared for us, first of all, from our planner green plan, 3 parcels have been added to the village of Tivoli and comprise the St. Sylvia's lands. These 3 parcels all scored 5 points due to their inclusion in 3 categories of the CPP for scenic features, trails, and gateways. That's target area number 3, historic values, target area 4, and village or village enhancing areas, that's target area 5. The 4th parcel provides potential trail access from Aspinwall Road to 89-acre Miglarelli parcel. That was included in the 2016 CPP and has been added since this seems to be an omission or an error in the 2016 update. Another parcel, which is that 89-acre Miglarelli parcel, had an incorrect tax identification number in the 2016 update, and that's now being corrected as part of this action.
And if I could just note, when you're looking in the spreadsheets, you're gonna see that Miglarelli parcel listed as Leone. It's actually owned by both, so
Right.
just so you don't
So we're
get
not confused. Yep. Okay, very good. And so what I have for you is the plan with those respective pages. And how it would be included in that very extensive list that goes.
Right, and so Ted gave us a few pages of the plan document that were the cover page and inside page showing an amendment date. And then he included 2 pages which are the actual charts that show the scoring of the plans for those specific tax ID numbers, which he's highlighted. Okay.
Okay. Very good. Well, we have a Part 1 EAF. It's a full EAF that's been prepared for us. I assume it's a full EAF because it resides within the historic district.
Robert, before we get too far into that, I just want to clarify, the memo that you referenced from Ted Fink,
Yes.
if anybody's doing research on this, so it's written to Robert and Christine.
Oh.
So I just want to make sure that that's not me, that's
Oh.
Christine Fall in this
Yes.
case. That was the request for that.
That's, yeah, it's Ted's memo that goes along with this explanation.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Christine Shaw, she says.
All right, so we have a full EAF that was prepared for us. The name of the action of the project is to amend the 26 Community Preservation Plan. And just so you folks know, this plan had to be kept the same for the first 3 years that it was adopted, and then it needed to be revised every few years. And so in 2016, there was a full-blown revision. It can be amended, at any time going forward. from here. So, local law number C, to amend the 2016 Community Preservation Plan in the town of Red Hook. The town board has proposed amendments, and we've described those amendments. The total acreage affected by the addition of the 3 parcels, that's Tivoli, is 2.7 acres, and then a very small parcel. Well, it's 3 in its entirety. If acquired, will provide for public use as a site for community facilities and recreational use, as well as for preservation of a historically significant building and adjoining lands. Okay, government approvals, yes, it requires the approval of the town board. Coastal resources, planning actions. Proposed development, there is no proposed development for the front. Are there any questions on this full EAF? Chris, you've had a chance to, Chris Shaw, you've had a chance to review this.
Yes, Ted prepared this for us to review, and he did prepare, I know you're not gonna get to your findings tonight, but for your review, so that you have an opportunity to review it before next time.
Yeah.
He did go over the impact analysis for you to look at, and the one identified as a potential impact would be, of course, the impact on historic and archaeological resources, because the proposed action.
What page?
Page 6 of Ted's EAF.
Number 10,
See that?
number 10. Impact on historic and archaeological.
Right, so he's identified that that would be an impact, of course.
On page
because-
6?
On the
second-
are you looking at the
second
EAF?
Page 10, she says.
Yeah, page 6, right in there.
Well, there's 2 sets of pages, so it's the second, page 6.
Right, the EAF
Oh.
is what we're in right now.
On the EAF itself, all right.
You see now?
Number 10,
Yeah,
take mine.
yeah, I got it, I got it.
Okay, sure, no worries.
This is my second page, so this 2 page 6s.
Okay,
So it, because of the location of the facility, it's identified as occurring within the, or substantially contiguous to National Register, because of course it's within the National Historic District.
right.
But the proposed action is designed to preserve and protect historic resources. So that would essentially be the end of that part of the analysis. He doesn't, I believe, identify any other potential analyses because the project is not proposed to include development at that site. And so if you go to the last page, on the second last page of that EAF document, he's also drafted a proposed determination of significance, and I'm not gonna go through that today, but that's what we would go through next time, all right?
All right, so what do we have in the way of
So we do have
resolutions?
right, we do have one resolution to refer the proposed action to the Village of Tivoli for their findings under the village's LWRP, because a portion of this action involves activities within the Village of Tivoli. The town's LWRP goes up and around the village, does not include the village. The village has its own LWRP, which affects projects within the village. So this resolution would be to ask the village to review their very similar, but somewhat different priorities and requirements for development within the LWRP area, and provide those findings to you prior to your taking an action on the matter. Okay, so that's what this resolution is for. You should have, all should have that in front of you.
And that's resolution number
36.
36, thank you very much. So it's a resolution regarding a referral to the Village of Tivoli for findings under the village LWRP, that's the Local Waterfront Revitalization Program, regarding the adoption of Local Law C, proposed of 2019, an amendment to the Community Preservation Plan. Now therefore be it resolved, and I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay. That concludes that item. We will now move on to agenda item number 3. So it's that time of year again. We referred to grant opportunities earlier in the meeting. We have been successful in getting municipal innovation grants, formerly referred to as shared services grants. The deadline for making that application is May 3rd. So I'm asking you to put your thinking caps on to see what type of grant opportunity you would like to take advantage of. We mentioned this property, St. Sylvia's property, as something that might be suitable for a grant application. I'm not going to put you on the spot now, but just keep in mind some other things that perhaps you'd like to consider under this grant. Okay. That's item number 3. Reorganization. We have actually a fair amount of reorganization that we still need to do for 2019, but for tonight, I would ask you just to, we'll tackle maybe just a couple things. First of which is...
Let's do the EDC, please.
Okay, Harry, let's do the EDC. Okay, and let's look at, they are staggered, Harry, already, so that's the good news. Oh, look at that, Harry, I think it looks to me like they were all done, that we've done all that. The only thing we haven't done at the moment looks like the chair.
Yeah, okay, let's see. I can't even find the pages.
Oh, right here, on page 6 again. It's not your lucky number. Top of the page, economic development committee.
Yeah, I got 6.
Okay. And so it looks like we did all the reappointments there, Harry, but we didn't appoint a chair. Would you like to make a motion to reappoint or appoint?
Yeah, move to appoint Christina Ducharme as the chair.
I would be very happy to support that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, are you on the EDC?
Sorry, yes, EDC, just for the chair. The chair spot, the rest of the appointments are good. So Harry made the motion, I made the second. Any further comment, Christine? No? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. So why don't we do Energy Committee? All of those folks, if you would just add 2 years to their terms. We do have a vacancy on the Energy Committee if you'd like to join. It's a lot of science and a lot of clean energy. We need to make an appointment for a chair. I would like to move that we appoint Dennis Calais to that spot. He's done a really good job. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Harry, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks very much.
There's 2 corrections in the EDC.
Okay.
Todd Baywright and Jessica Slingo have resigned.
Oh. Okay, Todd resigned too? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a couple vacancies there. So maybe you want to mention that to Christina,
Yeah.
and she has a couple of ideas on who might be good additions.
Well, there's a swirl in the interest in that committee from time rather frequently.
Okay.
So that's likely to be
An easy.
an easy fix.
Okay, great. Very good. Well, we're all about economic development again. To remind folks, our tax base has risen about $24 million in the last 3 years. Ethics Board, so they have not met. I think we should be in touch with these folks before we go ahead and do reappointments.
Fred was away when we tried to get him to meet last, he goes away for a couple of months in winter.
Right.
He's back now.
Okay, good. So let's be in touch with them, Harry, and let's make sure
Have
everybody wants
their
to stay
annual
on.
meeting?
Yep. The other thing is on Greenway and Trails, can we reappoint John, Doug, and Kat to that group, please? Because they are a holdover at this point for terms ending in 2020. I would make that motion.
Okay,
Oh,
second.
Christine beat me to it.
Okay.
Okay, second by Harry, all in favor?
Aye.
The chair is Harry, we're gonna reappoint Howie to that spot. Alright, I'll make the motion to reappoint Howie Callis to finish the one-year term, 2019. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The intermunicipal shared services highway working group, I think we can get rid of that,
Yeah,
that hasn't
yes.
been in operation.
It died an agonizing death.
Right,
Eliminate that?
Huh? Eliminated.
I would like to eliminate it for now. I think we're good on intermunicipal task force, I think we need to take a look at that membership as well and start rotating some folks in there. We have had the same folks in there for quite some time. Some of the folks aren't attending, some are.
I think Bill has a sense of what.
Okay, so we'll
He's
defer to
trying
him when he's back.
Yeah.
Okay. Local waterfront revitalization plan, that's a temporary thing, and you're all there for 2019. Do we have an official chair for that? Is that Paula?
I think it's become Paula.
Okay, would you like to make that motion?
Sure.
Okay.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Paula.
Happy Paul.
Happy Paula. She knows, she's agreed to it. Planning board's appointments, so I see that we've got Sam's. You know, I was in the impression Sam was just doing it for 2018, but it looks like we don't really have anybody for 2019.
He hasn't made any
I think
noise
it's
about it.
going better than he expected to,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, well, it'd be nice to have some new folks rotating, but I'll make a motion to reappoint him for 2019, since we're already in 2019, that's a
Second.
one-year appointment. But let's do consider the future, please. And who's the liaison to that, Christine?
That's me.
All right, thank you
Should
very
we
much.
vote on that?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, Tree Preservation Commission. I haven't heard anything to the contrary, and I believe that Michael, Kathy Michael, Doug Trout, Karen Cataret are all attending the Tree Commission meetings. So I would feel comfortable if they don't wanna, stay on, of course they
It's a
could
solid
resign.
group, they're very interested.
Yes, and we're very appreciative of all the work that they do, that you do. And so I would move to reappoint them for 2-year terms, 2020 expiration. That would be Karen Cataret, Doug Trout, Kathy Michael, Hop Michael. And is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And I would be very happy to reappoint Kathy Michael as the chair. And so I'd like to move that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Water District Board, same thing, we need to go through an update. I think it's safe to say that Hank Van Paris is stuck with us. So I would like to make a motion that we reappoint him. He's done such a great job for us all these years.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The other members, Jerry Gilnack is a holdover, Hank Van Paris, Nick Annis, and Ablen, I think that's misspelled actually. It's A-B-L-E-N, Amron. 2-year appointments, terms ending in 2020, and I so move.
Second.
And thank you. So we've done that. ZBA, we'll come back to that some other time. Let's go to the beginning of the list. The CAC wants us to be sure to appoint Leah Steinberg, who expressed interest a couple of months ago. We didn't get their reorg. And she would take the place of vacant.
Which one are you on, Robert?
I'm sorry, Conservation Advisory Council?
On page 5.
I'm jumping to the front, I apologize, Sue.
So who was that?
So the vacancy, Leah Steinberg, Abuya is her other last name. And we got correspondence from the CAC a couple months ago. They would like to appoint her to that vacancy. That would be a term ending in 2020, and I would make that motion and also include Julia Solomon, Stephen Appenzeller, and Susan Ellis.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Chair Lori Eusted, can't say enough about Lori Eusted, and would happily move to reappoint her to the Conservation Advisory Council Chair.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Design Review Hamlet, let's come back to that. Disaster Preparedness, I think we've kind of done that, although I notice we have to re-up. So, Hai Ping Ye is the chair, and doing a really terrific job, I might add. As the chair, I would make a motion, let me make sure she's, yeah, so she's good till 2019. I'd make a motion to have her continue as the chair. 1-year appointment, all our chairs, term ending 2019. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, so at-large community members, I see she has
Ready for you.
updated this, yeah, she has updated this. So Richard Franklin, Randy Klum, Eleanor Troy, Teresa Burke, our highway superintendent, Red Hook Central School District Rep Perry Sheldon, Bard College, John Gomez, and Steve Perot, but sometimes both of them at times. Red Hook Fire Company, Rich Hilbrand, Tivoli Fire Company, Tom Chrissy, Pat Hildebrand, Joseph Stevens. So these are 2-year appointments, and boy, they're not very staggered, are they?
No.
So let's make a motion for 1-year appointment for Dick Franklin, Randy Klum, Eleanor Troy. How about that? To stagger them. We'll keep them all as long as they want to stay, right? But
Yes.
we don't have any staggering. Our highway superintendent, Teresa Burke, let's do a 2-year appointment for that one. She's critical to that committee. And same thing for Perry Sheldon, John Gomez, Rich Hilbrand, Tom Chrissy, Police Rep Pat Hildebrand, and Joseph Stephen, Northern Dutchess Advisor, and I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Going backwards again, agriculture and open space. So this committee has not met in quite some time. And so I reached out to Michael Robertson, who, as you all know, runs with his wife Callie, Sawkill Farm, and Michael has agreed to take the reins and chair the committee. And we'll reach out to the members and also try and bring in additional and new members to the Agricultural and Open Space Committee. So for now, I'm just asking you to appoint him as a member and a chair, with the chair ending in 2019 and the member ending in 2020.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks very much. Assessment Review Board, we're now down to 3 out of 5. We need to reappoint Carl Dowden as chair, if you support that, which I do.
Yes.
Okay. And that appointment, just so you know, runs through 2023.
Wait, I'm sorry, are you talking about as
I'm sorry, as
chair?
the chair, and it's only 1 year.
But it says that the bar appoints chair on here.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna let them appoint, okay.
I guess, that's what's up.
But so it looks like you have a vacancy.
Well, we actually have 2 vacancies now, because Jay has just sent in his, or a little while ago, sent in his resignation. He's not gonna be able to attend this year. So we're down to 3. I guess the good news, it's an odd number. The bad news, it's only 3. We really should try and quickly, maybe between now and the next meeting, see if we can get some additional membership on that board, because there's training involved.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's a very important board, too.
yeah,
Very visible.
okay,
Wait, can we just go back over that for a minute?
sure.
So Carl Dowden is currently, his term is 2022.
Exactly.
So you don't need to do
So we don't
anything.
need to do anything.
We need to do nothing as far as the membership, except get a couple new members.
Okay, good,
Okay.
just to be sure.
So
Okay.
did you move that, Robert?
What did I move?
I think we
Nothing.
decided you didn't need to do anything because,
Oh,
the,
The committee appoints?
right,
The committee appoints.
that's what the note says.
So we don't have to,
Right.
Well, we certainly would support his reappointment. CPF, PDR Advisory Committee, so since they will be meeting, that's a once in a blue moon kind of committee. We need to make sure we have all those appointments up to date. Chair Mary Ann Johnson, so I would make a motion to reappoint her as chair. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then it's a 3-year appointment, so Rich Bazinski needs to be, he's a holdover all the way from the end of 2016,
Yeah.
so he needs to be reappointed for 2019.
Mhm.
Pete Hubble needs to be reappointed for 2021. And John Hardiman needs to be reappointed for 2021. And Ken Miglarelli needs to be reappointed for 2020.
Mhm.
And that's it, because Brent Kowalczyk is good through the end of the year. Mary Ann Johnson as a member is good through 2020, so I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much. Communications Committee, they have not met in a while, but probably should meet and review things like the website and take a crack at social media policy and so on and so forth. We have these members: Ann Conway, Lisa Vascallo, Vicky Perry, I believe, okay, Vicky Perry, Matthew Bradich, Joey Chevelle, and Teresa Burke. Highway 1-year appointments, all ending in 2018, so now I so move that the term is continued to the end of 2019. Is there a
Wait,
second?
I thought Vicky resigned from senior services.
She did, but she has not resigned from communication,
Oh, okay. Okay.
to my knowledge. Was there a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay. Thank you, all in favor? Aye. Well, I think we've done well, we still have a few more to do. Correspondence, I don't have any correspondence, that's number 5. And then before we go into attorney-client, we'll open it up for any more public comment. Linda? 100% chance.
Okay, I would suggest that the innovation grant be applied for St. Margaret's to assess accessibility for the disabled. And also to get our 10% for St. Margaret's from the CPF fund.
Okay.
And you need to make a committee. You didn't even mention that to me. There are no members.
The St. Margaret's, yeah, we've talked about it.
Yeah.
We've talked about it. I'm looking on this side. I hope that we'll be doing something with St. Margaret's before the year's end. So, this time, I would like to make a motion that we go into attorney-client. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all for joining us this evening.